Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Today we're taking a closer look at the LEMFO M1, a very unique smart bracelet because not only is it a fitness tracker that can detect hours that you've slept, steps that you've taken, and also your heart rate, but it also packs a pair of TWS wireless buds inside of the bracelet that you're wearing. So you can always have a pair of headphones with you when you're on the road. A very interesting two-in-one combination that sells for under 50 bucks. And the size of the band itself, of course, will be a little bit larger than the standard wristband just because it also needs to house the buds and the battery, but it's also not too far off, which is quite impressive in terms of how small it is. It can last for up to 15 days when you are using it for the fitness tracker only, but if you're using them to listen to music with the buds, expect the battery life to be a lot shorter because the battery case will only charge them for around 3 times. If you're listening to music for hours and hours, it may only last you for a day or two. But again, if you aren't touching the buds, you're just using it for fitness, it will last for 7 to 15 days. Fitness tracker functions are pretty basic and straightforward. Time and date also detects your heart rate and blood pressure. Blood pressure, though, is estimated based on your heart rate. Also supports notifications for text messages and calls, just like any other wearable these days. Inside, we have just the M1 itself, which we'll take a closer look at in a second. And there's also the charging adapter cable. It's magnetic, but it is proprietary. So like many other trackers and wearables, it attaches with a satisfying click. Finally, there is the instruction manual, and there's also some spare tips for the TWS buds if you want to get a more comfortable fit. But immediately we can see how thin and tiny these silicone tips are. It's almost invisible because of the fact they need to be ultra compact to fit into the profile of this band. We do have a pre-applied screen protector on the front, and there's a touch-sensitive area that you can use to wake it up from sleep. Otherwise, the bezel size is a little larger than some of the other bands we've seen, such as the Honor Band 4, but overall it's also not too bad, especially if you compare it to smartwatches. As you can see there, this is the TicWatch Pro, and again, it's not too far off. Now the side here contains the door that we can open up. The hinge can actually open at just one angle here, but what's interesting is it also has a mirror on the inside, so you can perhaps check if you're wearing the buds correctly or not. So it has a nice little extra feature tucked inside, and the buds are just right on top. They are magnetic. We can also do a size comparison with the other tiny pair of buds that we've reviewed recently, which are the Card 20s, which are dubbed as the world's thinnest TWS buds. And incredibly, you can see that the LEMFO M1s are not too far off from the Card 20s in terms of their thickness. They're just a touch thicker. For comparison, here's a normal-sized pair of wireless buds when it comes to the thickness of the silicone tip, so you can see how much it's been reduced as a result. It almost feels like you're wearing nothing at all. They are made out of a soft touch rubber material. The front surface is touch sensitive, which allows you to very gently tap, and it will register play and pause and skip track commands, although one thing you aren't able to do is adjust the volume higher or lower. And the body is constructed out of a lightweight plastic, but doesn't really attract fingerprints, so overall has a clean look. Now because of how shallow the silicone tip is, I will say that it doesn't have the tightest fit in the world. The triangular shape here tries to catch inside of your ears a little bit, but at times if you're doing vigorous exercise, they can still feel a little bit loose. So similar to the AirPods, these are not going to be the most snug-fitting buds in the world. One of the cons, though, is the magnet for attaching these buds back into the case is not the strongest, in the sense that sometimes you do want to push open a little bit, as you can see there, so you have to kind of press them down and then shut the lid for it to then begin charging inside. As far as the smart fitness tracker is concerned, we have the display, which is nice and bright, although it is a traditional IPS LCD panel, which means that it's not going to be quite as contrasty as AMOLED, but still is pretty good in terms of viewing angles. There it shows the time, date, as well as battery status, although one strange thing is you aren't able to change the time format into 12 hours, so it always is showing as 24 hours. Next function shows number of steps that you've walked, converted into distance for kilometers, once more for calories burned, and next one here shows heart rate, so it will pop onto life. You can set it up in the app so that it will take a measurement once every hour and track your fluctuations throughout the day. It works pretty well. In a similar fashion, we have the aforementioned blood pressure monitor, which also uses the same optical sensor to detect and again estimate your blood pressure. One more for taking a look at the battery, the connection status, and that is pretty much it. So very basic. First, a closer look at the companion app, which is called Kaka Fit. This is for the fitness tracker side of things. You can tap to refresh data and it will transfer over from the band, taking a look at the number of steps that you've walked, distance, and the number of steps in total for the entire week. Tapping on the dial here also shows you a slightly different visualization of how many steps you took at specific points in time throughout the day, so it breaks it into different hours, and you can also see a chart for the entire week, in addition for the entire month. A separate tab for sleep also shows you your light versus deep sleep and how long you've been awake, and hours total that you've slept. You don't have to press anything for it to begin tracking your sleep. Simply, if you're not moving around, it will try to register that, and if you're kind of sleeping between regular hours, between midnight and 8 a.m., it will track sleep in between that time pretty well. There's also a separate panel for you to begin taking a heart rate test directly, and also one here for blood pressure monitoring. And you can control it again from the band or from the app and store the results down below. The accuracy of the heart rate monitoring part is decent as well. Fitness trackers have been doing pretty well in this area for a while now. On this, I would say it takes a few seconds longer for it to get to a stable measurement. When you begin the test, the first number that appears is a little on the high side, and then because it's a continuous sensor, it will start to creep down to a more accurate result. So good to see that the fitness tracking component does work as advertised. When it comes to the settings though, it is very scarce in terms of things that you can control. You can toggle between different types of notifications that will appear on the band. You can also set different alarms. You can find the band, and if you tap on this, it will try to kind of vibrate the band itself. There is no built-in weather app on the tracker itself. This is only within the app on the phone, so you don't get a separate page to display weather information, for example, and band display settings is basically not supported. So again, you aren't able to change the display from 12 to 24 hours. That is a little bit on the limited side, and I hope that they can bring out some more updates to activate those customization options. But right now there's only one watch face, there's only, again, one watch view, but as far as the tracking results themselves, it does work surprisingly well. And now moving over to the TWS wireless buds, the sound quality component of the performance, I would say this area is what impressed me the most. I expected such tiny little buds to not sound very good, but they actually exceeded my expectations. Yes, we're still not talking about the best sound quality in the world, but they are surprisingly loud and very clean and crisp sounding, in the sense that if you're playing back music, even if you turn the volume all the way down, there's very little hints of distortion or static in the background. It's crystal clear and clean aside from the music itself. Perhaps the most limiting aspects of the sound would be the fact that because the fit is not super snug, at least for my ears, I did find that sometimes bass was a little lacking. So if you're someone that's a bass head, really enjoys vigorous beats, and listen to a lot of EDM music, it definitely isn't quite as punchy as some competitors out there. Mids and highs or trebles do sound very good, especially mids. I would say it sounds very clean and well balanced. So if you're listening to most pop music, if you're watching YouTube videos, they overall do deliver a very enjoyable experience. Now, despite the fact that these buds do not come with, say, Qualcomm's aptX certification, latency is also decent, especially if you're listening to only music or watching, say, YouTube clips with the left and right sides are synced together pretty well. I never encountered disconnections between the two sides. So that's more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the LEMFO M1 2-in-1 smart bracelet, fitness tracker, and also TWS buds. I think the concept is very clever. The idea of having these little buds that are always with you on your wrist at all times makes it super convenient, and if you're someone that's always listening to music, this also combines a well-functioning fitness tracker, albeit a very basic one in terms of features, but gets the essentials done, and surprisingly, it doesn't have too many compromises. At first, I thought it would be more of a gimmick, maybe the sound quality would be horrible, maybe the fitness tracker would not work, but everything for the most part does what it's advertised to do at a pretty affordable price of sub $50. You can check out more details if you are interested in the links down below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the LEMFO M1 2-in-1 Smart Bracelet TWS Buds.